All right.
Let me type a quick text to my wife, let her know. Okay.
Caitlin. Did she leave? She is gone. She left the TV on in the other room. Let me go mute that.
Okay.
Don't get too excited. Dog's getting excited for some reason. Yeah, you're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere for now. So, settle down. This dog's got a mind of her own.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, that's good. Lay right there.
Mm-hmm. Have you updated the notes? No.
Oh, I didn't hit save. There, I just hit save. It should take a minute. There, if you refresh it or reopen it or whatever you do, it should be updated. Okay. The top 16 should match yours and so on.
Yep. Okay. Beard pulling. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I saw a tweet from Steve Dangle today. He's defending Kadri, or he's saying stop. You know, everybody's making a big deal about this. Like it's kind of a gutless move, pulling on his guy's beard. It's like you don't pull hair, you don't bite fingers, you shouldn't be pulling on guy's beard.
That's what I'm saying, and I mean, maybe Kadri says it was an accident. I didn't mean to pull on his beard, but
well, he was also grabbing his jersey the whole time, so he probably had beard and jersey. And
yeah.
if he ended up trying to let go of the beard, he'd have let go of the jersey too, and then he would have really lost the fight. But
listen, here's what I'm thinking, okay? And you, okay, he's sitting there looking at the guy up close and personal, and those two are do-si-doing around the ice. You can't tell me it doesn't enter into his mind. Oh, I'm going to grab a big tuft of his beard right now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't prove that it's intentional,
No, I don't think
but
it was. I really don't think it was. But at the same time, he's not going to let go of the guy's shirt in order to let go of his beard. So,
yeah. But I mean, it's like the two chefs in that Bugs Bunny cartoon, the French chefs pulling each other's beard, and then honking each other's nose and whatever,
yeah.
So,
All right, let's get this ball rolling. All right, you ready?
ready to go.
All right. Hello and welcome to episode 20 of season 2 of the Hockey Nuts podcast. My name is Wayne Halley. I'm here with Steve Ball. How's it going today, Steve?
Good, Wayne. How you doing?
Oh, wonderful. We're here on a Friday afternoon. We're a little later than our normal broadcast time of Thursday, but we were both tied up yesterday, so we decided that today would fit better in our schedule. So here we are, Friday afternoon, about 3 p.m. Eastern. We are recording the latest episode of the Hockey Nuts podcast. So there is a lot to talk about this week.
There is.
And let me pull it up here. First of all, don't look now, but the Carolina Hurricanes are sitting in a playoff spot. And the Winter Classic happened this past week since we last recorded, so we'll have our reaction to all of that. The World Juniors are down to the final 2 teams, so we'll talk about that for a little while. And we have some Olympic news to talk about this week. And then, of course, we got our regular news of the week around the hockey world. So without further ado, let's get started. And we always get started with the 3 teams that we follow most. And that would be your New York Rangers, my Boston Bruins, and our Carolina Hurricanes, our local team.
Right.
And let's talk about Boston real quick because we had a postponement last night. The Florida Panthers were supposed to be in town. I don't even know if they made it into Boston or not, but they were supposed to play the Bruins last night in Boston. But with the snowstorm that was headed up, I'm refusing to call it what the news media is calling it. I'm calling it a nor'easter. All these made-up terms that the news media are making up are rather annoying. What was it? Last year was the polar vortex, and I'm not even going to get into what they're calling it this time. It's a nor'easter, folks. That's all it is. A very strong nor'easter.
Yep.
And there were parts of Boston being flooded, and basically it was a mess there, so they decided to postpone that game. And I looked over today. It says as of right now, it's postponed to a quote-unquote later date, but they haven't announced what that date is. And I kind of looked ahead at things to see what dates could possibly fit with both teams' schedule. And I didn't look at arena commitments because I don't think the Panthers arena shares with another team, but Boston obviously shares their arena with the Boston Celtics, so there's that to consider. And I didn't look at the Celtics schedule to see when it would fit in, but as far as when both the Panthers and the Bruins are open, I really only found 3 days throughout the rest of the season that are available to make up this game that doesn't violate any of the rules that they have in place, such as 3 games in 3 nights, traveling long distances on a back-to-back night. Usually when teams have back-to-backs, one road, one away, the 2 cities are relatively close together, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, the Boston Bruins, from basically the 1st of March all the way through the end of the season, are playing, with the exception of March 4th, they're playing every other night for the remainder of the season because, the Bruins have played, well, now they're the lowest number of games in the NHL. They've played only 38 games. Everybody else has played 40 or more for the most part. There's only 1 or 2 teams that have played so few. So they're going to have to make up those dates somehow. And with the month of March, I looked at March and every other night with the exception of March 4th. But the Panthers have a game on March 4th, so that date's out. So basically the entire month of March is out. and the week in April is just as busy for both teams. So we're looking at January and February as the only time that this game can be made up. And the only dates I found that both teams are both available and aren't already playing back-to-back nights are January 21st and either February 4th or February 5th. Those are the only 3 dates that I see. Unless they break those rules, unless they have one of the teams play 3 games in 3 nights or travel a long distance to play either the first or second half of a back-to-back. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see when that game will be made up.
A lot of times you see a lot of, even at this midway point of the season, you'll see a lot of time go by before that game is made up. It's not something that they make up the next week.
Right.
I don't even ever remember it being made up that quickly. But, I think that you're right, Wayne. They're gonna shoot for a date that's an open date where they don't want teams playing 3 games in a row.
Right.
I just don't see that happening. So I tend to agree with you. I think they're probably going to make it up here within the month.
Yep, and they'll probably announce it within the next day or two. They're probably looking at, working on rescheduling that date today as we speak.
Yeah.
If they haven't already finalized it by now at 3 p.m. on Friday, I bet we get an announcement by the end of this weekend.
All right, and it's like we've said before. When they set a game, it's like an act of God, because you have to have police people, you have to have the whole city basically is on alert. The area where the game is being held, you have to have safety personnel, police people, all kinds. It's something that's etched into the calendar and made permanent.
Yep.
And unless it's an act of God, those games are not they're not canceled.
Yeah, my guess.
If the referees and the teams can get to the arena, whether or not the fans get there or not, it's not that's a secondary concern. They will play that game.
Yep. Well, in this case, they decided to, for the safety of everybody, not play it. And my guess is they'll probably shoot for that February 4th, February 5th date, because the 21st is only less than 2 weeks away. So the 4th or 5th looks more like a likely date for that to happen. So, but as for the other games that happened this week, Boston going back to the 28th had a shootout loss to Washington. I was very disappointed in that game. I felt going into that game that night, as Boston fans know, Boston's troubles with the Washington Capitals going into that game had lost 11 in a row to Washington. And I felt all day long that day, tonight's going to be different because Boston's playing great. Washington, while they were playing good too, I thought it was going to be different. And it looked like it was for a while. But Boston had a 4-2 lead, I think, at one point in that game. And Washington came storming back, tied the game, sent it to overtime, and the Bruins ended up losing in a shootout. But it's a better game than they have had with Washington in recent times, because Boston hasn't even been making it a game of it lately. I mean, Washington's been going up 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 early when they played each other. This time it was the other way around. Boston went up 2-0, and at one point we're ahead 4-2, and it was Washington that had to storm back. So Boston did get a point out of that game, but the streak unfortunately continues. Washington has now won 12 in a row against Boston, dating back 4 years, I think, is how far back that one goes. So maybe next time. Well, actually, it won't be a next time. That was their final meeting of the season. So unless they face each other in the playoffs,
which is possible.
Yeah,
that's possible.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. So after that, though, the Bruins have been playing very well. They played Ottawa at Ottawa on the 30th, shut them out 5-0, and then they played the Islanders at the Islanders and beat them 5-1 in both games. It was just a total team effort, just a total beatdown. And the one thing that is coming through to me at this point with the Bruins is how balanced they are. They don't have that one line attack that they had at the beginning of the season. So teams can't shut them down by just shutting down one line and letting the rest of the line try to beat them. Because if you shut down one line, another line's going to come up and bite you. They've got to find another way to beat the Boston Bruins, and that's why they're playing so well lately. They were I don't have their record in December in front of me, but I think they only lost 2, maybe 3 games all of December, and I think only 2 games all month where they didn't get at least 1 point. So great month for the Boston Bruins.
Right.
In December.
Right.
So,
very good month.
Yep. So how about your Rangers?
I would say that we're sputtering, Wayne. You know, we're playing. We're not playing terrible. We're not playing great. We're playing better than lukewarm. I would say we're playing about mediocre. And you know, the loss to Chicago the other night was really. I mean, they didn't deserve to win that game. It was really 3-2 until they got 2 empty net goals there in the last, I don't know, 2 minutes of the game. But they didn't deserve to win that game. We just didn't play well. Chicago, to me, I saw a lot of inconsistent play in the neutral zone, which cost them. And Chicago played very well in the neutral zone during that game. Of course, being without Chris Kreider does hurt. He's a fast skater, and he can get the puck down the ice quickly. Other teams have to adjust to that when he's on the ice. So not having him makes a big difference. But regardless, I think that was a team that, had we been playing well, we should have won against, and didn't. And I'm talking about the game Wednesday night against the Blackhawks. But our first game was the shootout loss in Detroit, the very first time playing in Little Caesars Arena. That was a game we should have won. We blew it. We had Detroit on their heels and let that game go. We should have won that game, and disappointing loss that night. You know, you're not. Those shootouts are a crapshoot. If you're going to take it down to the shootout 10 times, you're going to be lucky to win 6 games.
Yeah, those can. I've resigned myself to the fact that shootouts can go either way. So, for sure.
Yeah, and I tell you, they were lucky to come away with a victory. I was very impressed with the play of Robin Lehner in the second period and in the third period in the Winter Classic. He played very well. He was the player of the game. I mean, he was better than any Ranger player. But we hung in there and won that game because once it hit overtime, it was obvious, at least to me, that we had a better team 3-on-3. I don't think Buffalo could keep up with us 3-on-3.
Yeah.
They may have had, you know, if they put Evander Kane and Jack Eichel on the ice, they may have had a good pair of offensive threats, but I think we could keep up with them. But I think that's a weakness, to be honest with you, Buffalo having to play 3-on-3 in overtime. I didn't see them as having the guns to take care of some of these quick, fast teams like Boston or Tampa Bay. We happen to have a fast team. I can go down the list. I can name some teams that would give them fits in overtime, and so.
Yeah, and Boston has played Buffalo once, at least once, if not twice, in overtime so far this season, and I can tell you, I agree with you. They're a one-line team when it comes to overtime, and they put Eichel out there, they put Kane out there together with whatever defenseman they happen to throw out there, and that's a dangerous group when they're out there. Once they're off the ice, that's when the other teams can take it to them.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the way. Yeah, you survive the Eichel Kane the shift, and then you go.
You don't want to you don't want the game to, you don't want to have to sit there and trade points with them. Okay. You don't want to have to sit there and say, oh, okay, we got 5 minutes to go. Let's get to our strategy is to get to the overtime so we can win. You want it. They're a team that is up and coming, I believe, but not in the caliber of a team. If you're a playoff team, you should beat them. I think we're in agreement on that.
Yep.
But here I was the other day. We get to overtime, and I'm watching, and Buffalo really had no punch. They had nothing in an overtime, and so and as I said, if you've got fast skaters, and we've got fast skaters on our team, you can neutralize Kane and
Eichel. Yeah,
you can neutralize that punch.
Yep.
So that's what wound up happening. But the game, was not I was hoping we would win it in regulation, and I was hoping that it would be a lot, 4 or 5-2, something like that. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
So
and what a great atmosphere too. I mean, I'm so sick and tired of these. The I don't know if it's the press or certain fans or what it is where you hear the negativity towards these outdoor games. I love these games.
Me too.
I just love these games. I mean, you're taking the game back to the roots of the game. The way it was, the way the game started was a bunch of guys with skates on a frozen lake and, a stick and probably a rock or a piece of wood as the puck. That's how the game was started. It's how it was invented. And,
right.
You're taking that element, the outdoors, and then of course with New York, the pomp and circumstance with it. You had the flyover before the game. You have you have all that, and I don't know about you, but if I was the Buffalo Sabres, I would ask for an extra home game next season because that game technically was a home game for Buffalo, but boy, it felt like a Rangers game. I mean.
Yeah, I didn't hear very many Buffalo fans, although they were there.
You go to you go to the end of the game in the game winner. You had the goal song that the Rangers play. They're I don't even know what the name of the song is. You probably do, but everybody knows that song and the fans cheer. Oh, and the goal horn and everything else. They had all that for the Rangers, and it just looked like a Rangers home game more than anything.
It felt like a Rangers home game. Yeah, it sure did. I agree with you. I don't know why, but I guess that's a lawyer thing. They work out who's the home team and who's the away team, and I'm not quite sure on that. But
all I have to say is I hope the World Junior Championship, if they profit any money, that the Sabres got enough to make up for the lack of a home date.
Really.
In the NHL regular season for hosting the World Junior Championships, because otherwise, if I was I would say, hey, look, we need another home game because they got screwed in that end. That was a
thing. Real quickly to finish up with the Rangers and Winter Classic. They had Boomer Esiason on the NHL Network. I don't know if you watched the pregame show.
I didn't, but yeah.
He was excellent. He hit the nail on the head as far as the Rangers, what he expected from them, and it really was good to hear his point of view. I don't watch his program on TV; it comes on every day, but he was really good in the pregame with Kevin Weeks, and I can't remember who the other person might have been Tony. I'm trying to remember his last name. Anyways, it was refreshing to hear him. So, and he kind of hit the nail on the head as far as the Rangers, how they're doing right now. So, let's hope that they pick up in their play here this week. They've got some games where they can really make a difference, including one in Vegas. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's my thumbnail on the Rangers.
All right. Well, good. Well, let's move on to the Carolina Hurricanes then. They had a fairly busy week, and we mentioned at the top of the show, they are now sitting in a playoff spot. And if the season ended today, Steve, we'd be looking at the Carolina Hurricanes playing the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of the NHL playoffs.
I quite honestly would like to see that series.
It might be kind of fun.
It sure might be. That would be no pushover, I don't think.
Nope. So, yeah, looking at last week, the Carolina Hurricanes, going back to the 29th, played Pittsburgh at home, beat them 2-1. Then they went out to St. Louis and lost in regulation to them 3-2. But to be fair, St. Louis is one of the best teams in the league right now. That was on the 30th, and that game could have gone either way. The Carolina Hurricanes played very well in that game. And then they came back home to play Washington, and that game ended up going to overtime, and they ended up losing 5-4 in overtime to that one. And they should have won that game as far as I'm concerned. They had the lead, and they allowed Ovechkin and the Capitals back into it. Basically, Ovechkin scored 2 goals late in that game, including the overtime goal to beat Carolina on that one. And they had contained him pretty well up until he scored those 2 goals. And then he just got away from them a little bit, and he ends up burning them for 2 goals. And they did manage to get a point, but that's all they got out of that game. And then last night, I watched this game. They went into Pittsburgh and shut them out 4-0. And Pittsburgh had all their stars for the most part. They had Letang played. They had Crosby, Malkin, Kessel. They were all up there. Matt Murray was in net. I mean, Pittsburgh had all their players. But Carolina shut them out 4-0 in a great, great game. Cam Ward played excellent in net, and the basically the stars of the game in that game was just how well overall the Hurricanes shut down that potent offense that Pittsburgh has.
Yeah.
And great game. So 2 wins against Pittsburgh in the last week for Carolina, and those 2 teams are battling. Pittsburgh going into that game was, I think, just a point back of Carolina in the standings. And, those are the games that if you're going to be a playoff team, those are the games that you've got to put teams away if you're going to earn yourself a playoff spot. So now Carolina is now sitting all by itself in that 8th spot. Before last night, they were technically tied in points, even though they had a game in hand on the teams behind them. They were tied with the Islanders and the Penguins in points, and now they're sitting. The Islanders lost last night, and then, of course, obviously, Pittsburgh lost last night. So Carolina is 2 points up on all the teams behind them, and they have games in hand on those teams that are directly behind them. So they are in the driver's seat now.
Yeah.
For the playoffs. So
where we thought they'd be.
Very excited.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm excited for the Carolina fans. Attendance is growing. The excitement is building in the area. We're seeing more coverage locally, the local media around the team because they're playing well again. So, the bandwagon is beginning to warm up. We'll put it that way. So overall, a good week for the Carolina Hurricanes, despite losses to Washington and St. Louis. They played well in those games as well. You can't, sometimes you are going to play games you're not going to win. But they played well in all 4 games. So the excitement continues for the Hurricanes.
Right.
Now, any other games you wanted to note around the NHL?
No, be perfectly honest with you, Wayne. As you know, this week for me has been hectic. I've had one thing right after the other, so I haven't watched a lot of hockey.
Okay.
I've seen some replays and stuff. I don't have any other games to report on.
All right. Well, let's take a quick look at the standings. We've mentioned the Carolina Hurricanes are in a playoff spot. If you look at the rest of the East, though, right now the Metro, the Washington Capitals are actually now sitting in first in the Metro. New Jersey's dropped to second. Columbus is now third. And the Atlantic, your top 3 are Tampa Bay, who's still leading by quite a margin over Boston. And Toronto is tied with Boston in points. But Boston has 4 games in hand on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that, I guess, makes them the second-place team officially. Because no doubts they're going to get at least 1 point out of those 4 games.
Right.
To take second place officially. Now the wild card right now, the Rangers are sitting in that number 7 spot, and the Carolina Hurricanes are sitting in 8th. And on the outside looking in, you have the Islanders, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Florida, Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, and Buffalo are all on the outside looking in. And in my mind, everything, Ottawa and Buffalo are pretty much out of the picture at this point.
They're toast.
I don't see them coming back. Montreal, Detroit, and Florida are on the verge of being toast, unless they make a serious run. They're going to have to. You're going to have to see at this point for Florida, Detroit, Montreal to get back into the playoff picture. They're going to need probably a winning streak of at least 5 games, if not more.
Yep. Straight
wins. And some regulation wins against the teams above them.
They're going to have to go on in their last 10 is going to have to look like 8-2, and then they're going to have to string together another 10 games of 8-2.
Yep.
If you look at it that way, and then they're back into it if they do that. So, win 15 of their next 20 games. That's probably what they're going to have to do.
That's probably you're probably right. That's probably what those 3 teams are going to have to do to get back in the picture.
And so, we'll talk in a minute in the Western Conference about some of my thoughts on things, but that's a very tall order to do, especially now that half the season is behind you.
Yep.
Everybody's playing tight now.
But on the good side, everybody still has their destinies in their hands because, for the most part, the first half of the schedule was dominated by interconference games, meaning teams West playing teams East. A lot of those games are out of the way. So the second half of the season, the bulk of the games are within the conference. So it makes those games against your conference opponents that much more important. They're going if you're outside the picture right now, if you're Florida, Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, and Buffalo, you cannot afford to lose to conference opponents anymore.
That's right.
If you're one of those teams.
That's very good. Very well said, Wayne.
So, and the same goes out west. And let's take a look at that. Right now, the Central Division, St. Louis is in the driver's seat in the Central, followed by Winnipeg and Nashville, but there's only 2 points separating the 3 teams, and Winnipeg and Nashville have games in hand on St. Louis, so that Central's as tight as ever.
Yep.
Pacific, you have Vegas in first, followed by L.A. and San Jose, and there's a bit of separation there. Vegas has 56 points, L.A. at 53, and San Jose at 47, and L.A. has played 2 more games than Vegas, so that essentially, the Vegas's lead is bigger than it looks right there. They're going to be in first place for a while. The 2 wildcard teams, Dallas and Minnesota, are not far behind St. Louis, Winnipeg, and Nashville. They're both Central Division teams, so that Central Division is extremely tight. And then on the outside looking in, you have Anaheim, Colorado, Chicago, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Arizona. Although Chicago,
I tell you real quick.
Yeah.
Whereas last week, and I totally agreed with you, Wayne, that basically you have 11 teams in the East vying for those 8 playoff spots.
Yep.
And in the West, you said, pretty much the only team out of it was Arizona. And I agreed. I agree with you. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't think Edmonton. I don't believe Vancouver will make it. I don't think Edmonton's going to make the playoffs. I really, at this point, they were coming back a little bit there, and they sputtered again.
Yep.
And it's too much for them to make up now.
Yep. Edmonton, I think, is too far behind. Edmonton and Vancouver, both, I think, are too far behind. And like you said about the teams in the East, Edmonton and Vancouver both are going to have to go on multiple runs of 8-2 in order to get back into it. And even then, that might not be enough.
Right.
Because there's just too many teams that are playing very well in the West. You look at Calgary, Chicago, Colorado now. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10.
Yeah.
They're playing very well now. So, Anaheim's been playing well, so it's just a logjam. It really is in the West, a
Yeah.
12-team race for 8 playoff spots.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you right now which of those 8 out of 12 are going to make the playoffs. It could be any one of those 12. But I honestly, realistically, Edmonton, Vancouver, Arizona are really out of the picture.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. And you know, it could, and I'm not saying it will, but it could be that Dallas winds up being the 12th place team when the playoffs are decided,
Yep.
because there's only 5 points separating them from Calgary.
Right.
So you just don't know how it's going to finish up. This is going to be a topsy-turvy dogfight for the rest of the way in the West.
Yeah, I mean, look at look at Dallas. 5 points away. They're only 5 points up on Calgary. Calgary's the 12th place team in the league, or in the conference. But if you look in the other direction, Dallas is 5 points out of being in first place in that Central Division.
True. That's true.
So you've got 10 points separating first place from 12th place in the conference.
Yep.
That's can't get much tighter at this point in the season. So
that's true.
Anybody's guess is better than, as good as mine on who out of that group is going to make the playoffs. And that's what I think is so fun about the NHL in the modern day world. It used to be the regular season was just kind of I don't know, back when it was 21 teams and 16 made it. Regular season really didn't mean much. You lost a regular season game, no big deal. It was always tomorrow. Well, every team now, or every game now, means so much, and it makes it so that the regular season now almost has a playoff atmosphere, particularly if it involves 2 teams that are right in the thick of the playoff race. So yeah, it's fun to watch. All right, well, let's move on. We've got some stories to talk about this week. We've had a few transactions, so let's get those out of the way. First and foremost, goaltender Al Montoya was traded to the Edmonton Oilers by the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday for a 4th-round pick in the 2018 NHL draft. It was actually a conditional 4th-round pick. It could end up being a 5th-round pick, and I believe the condition is tied to how many games Montoya plays for Edmonton. He hasn't played since November 4th because of a concussion. He practiced with the Canadiens on Monday. And they're expecting him to join the team immediately. And according to Kevin McClellan anyway. And question is, though, is what happens with Brossoit if Montoya is going to be their backup? Are they going to send Brossoit down?
You know what, Wayne? I think that's why the deal was done. But I think that they need a veteran goaltender in there to give Cam Talbot some competition and to try and jumpstart their season, get things going.
Brossoit's numbers are not that great. 3-7-1, 3.22, 886 save percentage. That's not good this day and age. And I think with the play of Antti Niemi in Montreal, he's played very well for the Canadiens since joining them back in November. I guess that made Montoya expendable for Montreal.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So, and question is, what I'm wondering is, Brossoit, if he has to pass through waivers or not to go down. He may be young enough where he doesn't have to pass through waivers. They can just send him down.
Right.
So, I guess just a minor goaltender switcheroo there in that trade.
Right.
All right, defenseman Scott Mayfield agreed to terms to a 5-year contract with the Islanders on Thursday. Financial terms were not disclosed, but Cap Friendly has it as a 5-year, $7.25 million contract, which equates to $1.45 million per year. Mayfield could have become a restricted free agent on July 1st. He has 10 points and has averaged 17.34 of ice time in NHL career high 29 games this season. The Islanders selected Mayfield in the 2nd round of the 2011 NHL draft. He He has 20 points in 65 games since making his NHL debut on April 6, 2014. That's a nice friendly number for the Islanders. 1.45 per year.
Yes.
For a guy that could develop into a top 4 for them.
Very good point, Wayne. I agree. And when you pay that kind of money for a defenseman, that's a steal.
Yeah.
I mean, even a mediocre defenseman, it seems nowadays is earning 3+.
Yep.
So that is a very good deal. If he develops halfway to what they're probably thinking, if he turns out to be top 4, it's a steal of a lifetime.
Yep. At least for the next 5 years, anyway. And every team needs guys that are in this price range that can produce.
Right.
So it's a very good move for the New York Islanders. All right, Jonathan Marchessault, forward for the Vegas Golden Knights, signed a 6-year, $30 million contract on Wednesday. The 27-year-old could have become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. The contract has an average annual value of $5 million. Chosen from the Florida Panthers in the 2017 NHL expansion draft, Marchessault leads Vegas with 37 points in 35 games. Playing on a line was William Karlsson and Riley Smith. Marchessault had an NHL career high of 30 goals and 51 points for the Panthers last season. An undrafted free agent, Marchessault has 107 points in 159 NHL games with the Blue Jackets, Tampa Bay Lightning, Panthers, and Golden Knights. So obviously they like what he's doing for them, and they locked him up for a few years.
He's one of those core guys,
Yep.
For Vegas's future. You and I have talked about him on this program. My opinion, he's their best player, offensive player. But you could throw 2 or 3 guys in that mix. But Jonathan Marchessault is definitely the future of the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, he is one of the core guys, and so an excellent pick from Florida.
Yeah, I don't know why Florida gave him up. I guess we could revisit what Florida protected and what they didn't. But if he scored 30 goals for Florida, I don't know what they were thinking in not protecting him. But I guess that'll be a discussion for another time, because I didn't really look up the reasons why I thought that would be the case. But that aside, you look at the Golden Knights, and if going back to that expansion draft, they pretty much drafted guys that all had just a year left in their contract. They didn't draft anybody that has long-term, a lot of time left in their contract. They basically left themselves open to deciding whether or not they needed to keep a guy after this opening season. So Vegas is now in a spot where they got to start ticking away at some of these guys that they want to keep.
Right.
And getting them signed for the future, because if they were to sign nobody, they'd be left with no team at the end of the season and have to sign a whole bunch of players.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
So they're slowly starting to tick away. I think they signed Marchessault this time around, and they've been slowly ticking away. I don't have it right in front of me, but Vegas says. Is starting to tick away at the roster and starting to get some of these guys signed. Riley Smith was one that they signed earlier this season to a long-term contract. They got him locked up. Cody Aiken, I believe I don't know if they signed him. He's got 3 years left on his contract. David Clarkson as well. Has this season, next season, the season after. I say 3 years. That's including this year. So yeah, they're beginning to get their roster basically taken care of. Braden McNabb is another one that they signed long term. So yeah.
Yep.
Starting to see some guys put down their roots there in Vegas.
Right. And I think of the Vegas Golden Knights, And every time I think of them and how this season is going for them, I'm still shocked. I can't put into words when I watch that team and how they're coming up with these victories, how unbelievable it is for a team that wasn't in existence last year. Neither was any dream of their players. We really had no idea. If you'd have told me Jonathan Marchessault was going to go to the Vegas Golden Knights last year at this time, I'd have said, "What are you smoking?" You know, I would have never thought that Florida would let him go.
Yeah.
Just things like that. And I think about Vegas and I'm like, my God, they probably are the second best team in the NHL right now. At least they're playing that way. So it's unbelievable.
Yep. Yep. Certainly did. Yeah, they did not sign Clarkson. That was a contract that existed beforehand, but they did sign McNabb to a 4-year contract. And then
Seemed to me, I remember that.
And then Riley Smith, looking at Cap Friendly right now. Yeah, Riley Smith was signed by the Florida Panthers to a 5-year deal. So that wasn't a Vegas signing. All right, well, let's move on anyway. The last transaction I have for the week is goaltender Eddie Lack was acquired by the New Jersey Devils in a trade with the Calgary Flames for defenseman Dalton Prout on Saturday. The Devils will be Lack's 4th team since the 2014-15 season. The 29-year-old was 1-2 with a 5.29 goals against average and an .813 save percentage in 4 games for the Flames this season, and is 55, 53, and 18 lifetime with a 2.6 goals against and 909 save percentage with the Canucks, Hurricanes, and Flames. Prout had no points in 4 games for the Devils this season. He played his first 5 NHL seasons for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who traded him to New Jersey on March 1st. Goaltender Corey Schneider has played 29 of New Jersey's 37 games this season, with backup Keith Kincaid playing in 10. So I don't know why the Devils would have traded for Lack. Kincaid, I don't think, has played that badly. Has he?
No, he beat us at the first of the year, Keith Kincaid, when we played them. Although I did not think he was exceptional, he did enough to win. So, but again, this could be a thing where they are wanting, here come the playoffs and in February and March, and they're going to want a veteran backup. And if Keith Kincaid is playing well enough to keep that job, more power to him. He gets to ride it out probably in the playoffs. But if he's not, then they've got Eddie Lack, who, when he played in Vancouver, he had some flashes of brilliance. He played very well there.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe it's just one of those things where they're starting to beef up now. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to be an insurance type. They probably don't have much for depth behind Kincaid, so you're probably right. They're probably decided, hey, this year we're going to make the playoffs. We need to get, a couple of guys at each position ready to be slotted in if any of our guys get hurt in the playoffs. So,
right.
So yeah, that does make sense if you look at it that way. But Eddie Lack, he's only played 4 games this year, and he hasn't been that great in those 4 games, as his numbers show. All right, let's move on to injuries. Nashville Predators forward Philip Forsberg will be out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. Forsberg was injured during a 4-2 loss to the Wild on December 29th. He missed Nashville's next game, which ended his consecutive game streak at 325, which goes back, that includes the playoffs, and was placed on injury reserve back on December 30th. The 23-year-old leads the Predators in goals and points with 34 and 37 games, and was one of 9 players to play in all of his team's regular season games since the start of the 2014-15 NHL season, according to the Elias Sports Bureau. Forsberg is a big part of Nashville's offense. That's a big loss for them.
It is. You know, it's one of those things, Wayne, where Nashville has to adjust, and uh, you know, it remains to be seen how they will. That Central Division that they're playing in, it is volatile, and you know they have the team. They've got some deep. You know, they're deep. It's not that Nashville does; they do not lack depth. They're a good team, so they're going to have to adjust, and somebody's going to have to step up, and we'll see how that goes. But that is a big loss. You're right.
Yep. And Nashville's still playing very well, so I don't expect that they'll go into a free fall or anything because they're still a very talented team. All right, let's talk about Chris Kreider a little bit. There was an update on him that came across today. Rangers forward Chris Kreider, who is out indefinitely with a blood clot in his right arm, will have surgery to have his rib resected. Rib resection involves a surgical removal of a segment of the first rib, which is the rib closest to the head under the collarbone, according to the University of Wisconsin Hospitals and Clinics Authority. On April 4, 2016, Tampa Bay Lightning center Steven Stamkos had similar surgery to remove a rib in order to treat a blood clot near his right collarbone. Stamkos was expected to miss 1 to 3 months. He returned on May 26th when he played in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Final against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kreider left New York's 1-0 victory against the Capitals on December 27th in the first period. The clot was diagnosed later that night. Kreider, who has 22 points in 37 games this season, his sixth season with the Rangers. He had NHL highs of 28 goals and 53 points last season. I'm confused at how removing a rib can correct a blood clot.
Yeah, gosh, that one, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that Steven Stamkos, that's why they removed his rib. But I listened to Darren Drager Wednesday night in the game, and he had analysis on this. This is prior to the information that you shared just a second ago.
Okay.
Saying that the likelihood that he would be back anytime in the next 2 months is virtually not going to happen. That this blood clot and getting that solved would be a 2-month minimum ordeal. That the Rangers shouldn't expect Kreider back anytime before March. And that was what he reported. So now, whether or not he knew of this impending surgery, I don't know. But he did say that an update was expected later this week. So this must be the update he was talking about.
Yep.
And maybe he had some inside information on that.
Yeah, he probably did. And
yeah.
You know, obviously, with a medical condition, there are rules in place with the league and, you know, the medical industry in general that makes it so we couldn't talk about it. So until the team came forward and said something, but yeah. So apparently, probably what it does. I mean, there's probably a rib that gets in the way there that I don't know how that causes a blood clot, but apparently by removing it will correct the issue, just like it did with Stamkos. The injury is pretty much the same as what Stamkos went through, and now Kreider is going through the same thing. So. I can't remember, though, what point in the season Stamkos went down with that. Was that about the same time? Because, you know, he came back in that Game 7. Wondering if Kreider will make it back in that time.
You know, he had the rib removal blood clot. I always heard it called a blood clot. I never heard that they removed the rib, but and then he had that broken leg. Remember, he went into the goal post and broke his leg, a compound fracture. And I think he had another injury for a little bit. I'm not remembering what that was for a long length of time. I think it was his knee. He tore
yeah, he's had some major injuries over the years.
Yeah, but to go back to it.
Oh, did we lose?
Oh, you know, until playoffs started.
Yeah.
So that's all I remember. I vaguely remember it, but I just don't remember the time frame involved.
Okay. Well, hopefully the Rangers will have him back before the playoffs.
God, I'm hoping so too. You better believe it.
Yeah.
We need. Yep.
Okay. All right. That's all the injuries I had for the week. It was a very quiet week in terms of injuries, despite all the games going on. So let's move on to some suspensions and fines. We had a couple this week. Maple Leafs goaltender Frederik Andersen had been fined $2,000 as a supplementary discipline under NHL Rule 64, which is the diving embellishment rule. The NHL announced on January 4th. NHL Rule 64 is designed to bring attention to and more seriously penalize players and teams who repeatedly dive and embellish in an attempt to draw penalties. Fines are assessed to players and head coaches on a graduated scale. In this case, this was number 2 on that scale. Anderson was issued a warning following an incident flagged by the NHL hockey operations during NHL game number 343 against the Hurricanes on November 24th. His second citation, which triggered the $2,000 fine, was issued for an incident at 7:30 of the second period during NHL game number 593 against the Vegas Golden Knights on December 31st. I've got a couple comments on that. I saw the play.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I'm kind of surprised. Based on what I saw, I'm kind of surprised that the NHL went ahead, and I commend them for doing so because obviously he plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We all know the press and the pressure and the pedestal that the Maple Leafs get put up on around the hockey world, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
This play, essentially, all it was is, Anderson goes behind the net to stop a puck and leave it for a teammate. The opposing player goes around the back of the net, and as he skates by Anderson, never even made contact with him. If anything, made slight skate-to-skate contact with him. Going by. No hit, no body contact whatsoever.
Yeah.
To me, it looked like there was no contact because I didn't see, and I don't remember what player was skating around behind the net, skating past him, but his foot didn't even move as far as I could tell. Right. So that's why I say there was very little, if no, contact with Anderson. Well, Anderson went down like he got shot, like he got slashed or hit, or I mean, it was ridiculous. And the play went up the ice with no call, no nothing on that. That play could have easily been let go by the league, and nobody would have batted an eyelash at it. It would have just looked like that the goalie just tripped over himself and fell down. And so I commend the NHL, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs. As much as there are fans that are anti-Maple Leafs fans out there that think that the league are doing things to help the Maple Leafs succeed because it is Toronto.
Yeah.
To go ahead and identify this play and slap him. Now, granted, it's not a punishment that affects the team in any way. It's just simply a fine. It's not, it's not a suspension or anything like that would affect the team on the ice. It's just a $2,000 fine, which is pennies to those guys. But still, they still did something about it just the same.
Right.
So I commend them for doing it. But I don't know if you saw that play.
I did not see that play.
It was pretty much all of nothing.
Yeah. And I did not see it when it happened against the Carolina Hurricanes either.
Yeah. So it's just the league trying to get that stuff out of the game, and it is what it is. All right, and the other one we had this week, Edmonton Oilers forward Patrick Maroon has been suspended for 2 games without pay for interference against the LA Kings defenseman Drew Doughty during NHL game number 611 in Edmonton on Tuesday, January 22nd. The Department of Player Safety announced on January 3rd. The incident occurred at 19:44 of the second period. Maroon was assessed a match penalty for a legal kick to the head under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, and based on his average annual salary, Maroon will forfeit $21,505. I saw that play as well.
I saw that play. Yes, sir.
And I mean,
Yep.
obviously, the video says that the onus on the player delivering the hit is to make sure that he's eligible to be hit. Basically, the way it looked, and I think Maroon's story was, it looked like Doughty was going to get the puck away from McDavid. McDavid was going around the back of the net. Doughty was going in to cut him off and to either check him or go in and take the puck. And Maroon basically just hit him, blindside hit him,
Yep.
making contact to the head first. And Doughty never had the puck, never even touched it.
Right.
So it was obviously an interference. And because of the fact that it was a hit delivered to the head, that's what earned him the match penalty and ultimately the 2-game suspension. So, and Maroon's a tough customer. He's a guy that plays a tough game, but he's not dirty. He doesn't have this was his first suspension of any kind. He doesn't have a history, so he's not afraid to muck it up, but at the same time he generally plays it fairly clean outside of this incident. So I don't know what more to add to that.
No, you hit it on the head. I saw the replay of that. And he deserved the match penalty, and they got it right.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, let's move on to some of the other interesting stories. And before we move too far along, let's talk some World Juniors.
Hey, I wanted to say something since we've reached this segment of the show real quick, Wayne.
Yeah.
I need to make a correction. I said something wrong last week during the World Juniors segment when we were talking about future NHL stars and where they had played prior to them going to the NHL. And I had said that Michael Grabner played for Denmark, which was totally wrong. Michael Grabner played for Austria. And I don't, you know how it is. You get talking in this on this podcast, and you don't even realize sometimes what you're saying.
Yep.
You can easily make mistakes. So I apologize for that to the Rangers fans and to you. So.
Oh, I'm sure I make mistakes every week, and it happens. After all, we are fans. We're not going to get it right. We don't have the army of assistants that some of these high-end members of the press have. So we just have our computers in front of us and the little bit of notes that we take before each week, and that's as far as we have.
That's right.
We don't get paid for this, so
I feel much better now that I brought it up, Wayne. Thank you.
until we start getting paid to do this, I'm not going to take us too seriously to the point where I'm just going to say, yeah, we'll both make mistakes, and it is what it is. All right, so let's talk some World Juniors. We are now into the final night of action in the World Juniors. It's actually tonight, and in fact, one game is going on right now as we speak, the bronze medal game. But before we talk about that, let's get you caught up on where we've been over the past. Obviously, the round-robin part of I'm trying to find it now. Games, statistics. Maybe it's under statistics. No. Teams. No. Anyway. Yeah, I don't have the final standings in front of me for the round robin finals. But suffice to say, here are the 4 teams that ended up in the quarterfinal of the World Junior Championships. So we started with 10 teams?
Yes.
10-team tournament. 8 made it into the quote-unquote playoffs. So in the first round of the playoffs, we had Sweden taking on Slovakia. We had U.S. taking on Russia, Canada versus Switzerland, Czech versus Finland, leaving Belarus and Denmark as the 2 teams out. And they actually ultimately played each other in the what they call the relegation round, which basically determines which of those 2 teams get to stay in this tournament next year, and the other one has to go down and play their way back into the tournament. And that but let's get that one out of the way. The relegation round, Denmark ended up beating Belarus in that game. So Belarus will have to play their way back into the tournament next year, and Denmark will stay, basically guaranteeing their spot in the tournament next year. Now, back to the playoffs. In the Sweden-Slovakia game, Sweden advances with a 3-2 win in that one. U.S. beat Russia 4-2 in their quarterfinal round. Canada beat Switzerland 8-2 in theirs. And Czech Republic beat Finland 4-3. So that means Sweden advanced on to play the USA in the semi, and Canada advanced on to play the Czechs. The Canada-Czech Republic game was really never in question. Canada blew them away 7-2. Yeah. So Canada ends up in the gold medal game. And in the other semifinal game, Sweden versus USA. USA was the favorite team in that one, but Sweden upsets the Americans 4-2. And basically, from what I could tell watching that game, they pretty much focused on shutting down the line that included Casey Middlestat and Kiefer Bellows, and just almost dared the rest of the team to try to beat them. Mm-hmm. They played that patented tight defensive style that Sweden is known for, and they ended up beating the Americans. Frustrating. I mean, the USA outshot them almost 2-1 in that game, and they just couldn't score.
Yeah.
And they had plenty of chances. They certainly had plenty of chance. Missed the net a lot. That was frustrating for me to watch. Is Americans would get a great shot and it would end up on high glass half the time.
Right.
So, and of course, the the Canadian press and the Canadian fans were celebrating all over the Twitter sphere when the USA lost, almost as if they had personally beaten the Americans.
Right.
Which was rather annoying to me, to the point where I'm now, even though I've got family in Canada, my mom was Canadian, logically thinking I should root for Canada in this next game. No. The press in Canada are full of themselves, and a lot of their fans are too, thinking that Canada is owed this tournament every year. I'm now going to root for Sweden in the gold medal game,
especially after we beat them in the outdoor game.
Yeah, and that's when I started getting annoyed with the Canadian press. There was a couple of members of the press that were tweeting online that, this game shouldn't have been played in those conditions, and it was bogus, and Canada should have won because of the conditions, and it was ridiculous, and on and on and on. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, these kids from Canada grow up in those conditions. They're used to playing in those conditions as kids. A lot of the American kids grow up in southern markets or outside that snow belt, I guess, if you want to call it that. And a lot of the American kids have never played an outdoor game before. That was their first. So don't give me that crap that the conditions were too tough for the Canadians to overcome, because if anything, having it snow as much as it was during that game, Canada should have had the advantage over the Americans in that sense, as far as I'm concerned. So just quit crying about it, Canada.
I agree.
So I'm so annoyed with the Canadian press and just the overall attitude that Canadians and the Canadian press have over this tournament, that they almost feel entitled to the gold medal every single year in this tournament. I'm rooting for Sweden tomorrow or today.
That was very well said, Wayne.
So, and of course, the Czechs and the Americans are playing right now in the bronze medal game. So, hopefully, the Americans care enough about that game to try to win. So, because we know last time, was it the last Olympics? The Americans lost and ended up in the bronze medal game, and it was obvious that they could give a crap about it because they barely even showed up, and they ended up losing the bronze medal game. So yeah, we don't want the Americans to develop a sore loser attitude when it comes to that. They should go out and try to win a bronze medal at this point. in this game, and they can because, they were after all they were picked to win the gold. So that's what's tough about these single elimination or single game. You just have one bad game and bam, you're done.
Yeah.
I bet if the U.S. played Sweden in a best of 5 or a best of 7, they would come out on top almost for sure.
This team would. You're right. I agree.
So anyway, so it looks like it'll be Canada-Sweden for the gold. That is at 8 o'clock tonight, so I'll be watching that because I think the NHL has a fairly light schedule tonight. So it was hard to pay attention to both this tournament and the NHL at the same time, especially given the busy weeks we had at work.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So, well, good. Well, one bright spot, though, in terms of the Americans, of course, we mentioned him earlier, Casey Middlestad. I think instead of going back to college, I think Buffalo should really put pressure on him to sign now. They need him.
Yeah, you're right.
They need him in the worst way because his rights are owned by Buffalo. And Martin Nichas, he's put on a show for the Czechs.
Yes.
And, of course, the
Hurricanes.
He's a Hurricanes prospect.
Yep.
He actually played one game for them in the beginning of the year before they sent him back. Yeah, he's another bright spot in the Carolina Hurricanes' future. That's going to be a nice player coming in when he's ready. So, well, good. That's all I had for the World Juniors that I wanted to put in.
No, Wayne, you did a good job. I agree with you, especially on the Canada comments.
So you're not saying you don't disagree, huh?
No, I agree. I feel like they feel entitled to this championship each and every year, and I'm frustrated that we couldn't win the game against Sweden and get onto the championship to play them again. But
yeah.
That's the way it goes. They may have a terrible time against Sweden.
Yeah, because in that outdoor game, all I heard was excuses from Canada as to why they didn't win. Not taking ownership that they just didn't play well enough to beat the Americans. It was just excuse after excuse after excuse. And you know what? I'm over it. Go Sweden. All right, let's talk some NHL All-Star Game news. They unveiled their uniforms today, I think it was. Well, January 3rd, they unveiled them. And kind of interesting. I don't know if you saw them.
I'm looking at them right now.
Yep, they're bringing back the orange and black from the old. It's kind of a throwback to the old NHL. Remember years ago, of course, the NHL logo used to be black and orange,
right,
not the silver and black that it is now. And they brought that color scheme back for this year's All-Star Game, for two of the teams anyway, for the Pacific Division and the two Western Conference. The Pacific and the Central will be wearing the orange and black scheme, whereas the Eastern Conference teams are going to be almost wearing, if you're an NFL fan, of the Seattle Seahawks, those colors.
Which I think is the coolest jersey of them all.
The blue, the bright yellow, and then a little bit of silver and gray mixed in there. And if you look on the back, the numbers, and it hit me immediately, before even reading the article, when I looked at the numbers and the lines that are going through the middle of the digits, I'm like, man, that looks like a cable stay suspension bridge, similar to what you see in Boston. Well, when you read the article, it actually is just that. It's an homage to the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which is a very large bridge in the Tampa Bay area, and basically a landmark in that area. So I've never been to Tampa, so I don't know what bridge they're referring to. I'm sure it's very prominent in the Tampa Bay skyline, but yeah, those lines are reminiscent of that. So So yeah, and there's a very long article. There's a link in the show notes that explains how they came to these colors, and all the basically every little marking on each of these jerseys has its significance, and this article explains that significance. So, but they're calling the orange as a it's more of, rather than a throwback to the NHL old style days, is the orange of the sky in a Tampa Bay sunset is what they're is the reasoning behind the orange. So either way, we'll take it. It should be interesting. There'll be no mistaking which team plays for who. And of course, they're doing that 4-team format that they did the last 2 years.
Yeah,
they're doing that same format this year, which seems to it's thoroughly entertaining. Have a 4-team 3-on-3 tournament, because I love watching 3-on-3 hockey.
Yep, I agree.
So it'll be a fun weekend for sure. All right. Now, Hockeyville, as an article about Craft Hockeyville USA. Nominations have opened up for that. And the only thing I have to say about that is, let's go America. Let's band together and make sure that a Western Pennsylvania arena does not win it this time.
That's right.
This will be the 4th year of the Craft Hockeyville USA, and the last 2 years, the winner has been from Western PA, which means those damn Pittsburgh Penguins get to play in the Craft Hockeyville game.
Yeah.
I know the NHL loves the Penguins, loves to put them in big things, for obvious reasons. They got, a great team and yada, yada, Crosby, whatever. I'm so tired of seeing the Pittsburgh Penguins in games like this. Let's start focusing on, putting the spotlight on some of the other teams. There are other good teams in the league. Pittsburgh Penguins aren't even in a playoff spot, for crying out loud. So let's band together. Let's get the Hockeyville game out of Pennsylvania and into another into another state.
I agree.
So
I agree with you.
So yeah, it's a long process of choosing that arena, but for some reason Pittsburgh area and Western PA has owned it for a while. I say there's definitely a couple arenas here in the Carolinas that need some work.
Yeah.
I could tell you that.
Yeah.
Because the whole contest is about getting upgrades for some arena.
I could see them going to Michigan or Wisconsin or something like that.
Well,
Minnesota.
they've already done one in Michigan. The very first one was in Marquette, Michigan.
Right. I remember that.
So, yeah. I think, well, I'm not saying that the Boston area deserves one, because, everybody knows it's one of the hockey hotbeds of the country, Boston, and there are countless arenas that are older than Bobby Orr skates, but
yeah.
But I'm sure they're going to get their due eventually at some point. But I'm not trying to sway them towards. I'm just trying to get it out of Pennsylvania at this point. All right, moving on. The bye weeks are about to begin. I don't know if you saw this article.
Yes, I just know the Rangers bye week comes up after Sunday night's game, and I didn't see the article, but I know that they're starting.
Yeah, the Bruins have theirs January 8th through 12th. Actually, every team in the league, they've done it a little different this year, is all the bye weeks for all 31 teams are taking place during the month of January.
Yeah.
And it basically, what the bye week is, if you don't know what it is, it's a mandated 5-day break for every team in the NHL. At least 5 days. Some of the teams are actually getting 6. But 5 days minimum. And this is part of the collective bargaining agreement between the players and the league, where the team is not allowed to have any practices or games during that 5-day period. So this allows all the players to get a little bit of a mini vacation during the season. And most of the players will leave town and go back to their homes. Some will stay around, but every player is basically free to do what they want during those 5 days. They just are not supposed to have any team events whatsoever during those 5 days. So yeah, every team in the NHL, if you notice, will have their 5-day break. Basically, the first day of bye weeks is January 7th, and it all ends on, I'm looking at the dates, the 19th, I believe.
I think that's correct, Wayne.
So sometime between the 7th and the 19th, your favorite team is going to have a 5-day break. Boston is 8th through 12. Carolina is the 15th to the 19th. The Rangers is 8th. Boy, the Rangers having theirs towards the end, right? Yeah, Rangers 8th through 12. Oh, theirs is right away coming up too.
Right.
But with the postponement and this 5-day break, by the time we get to January 12th, the Boston Bruins should have by far the fewest games played in the league.
Yeah.
My God. They're getting a lot of time off this first part of the year. They're going to have to play 40 games in like 80 nights.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the way it's going to be. We talked about how their March and April schedule is every other night for the entire month of March and April. With a lot of back-to-backs.
And, you got the All-Star break coming up, so everybody's off for that too.
Yeah, that's true. That comes at the end of January, right after the bye week's end. You have the All-Star break, which is another 3-day break for the players. Boy, they get all kinds of breaks between the All-Star break and the Christmas break and the bye week break. A lot of players they've got a pretty good deal with the league there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the month of January between the 8th and the 19th, that's an 11-day period where the NHL, you're not going to see 15 game nights, 12 game nights. I think the most you're going to see is like 8 or 9 games on a Saturday night. So it'll be a bit of a quieter schedule there for a couple of weeks in January. All right, next story. Stamkos, Steven Stamkos was voted by the NHL fans as the captain of the Atlantic Division team for the 2018 Honda NHL All-Star Game, which obviously is held at Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay on January 28th. The other captains are going to be Connor McDavid for the Pacific Division, PK Subban for the Central Division, and Alex Ovechkin for the Metropolitan. No really big surprises there. So basically the fan voting this year, in order to prevent another John Scott situation, all they're allowing the fans to do now is vote the captain of the team.
Right.
And they're giving us choices of who to choose from, because I voted a couple of times. You could vote like up to 3-4 times a day or something like that for a period. And I voted just to go through the process a couple of times just to see what it would look like. Basically, it gave you 3 or 4 players from every team that you could vote for, and then they had a very small area of write-in spot. So they made it very difficult to do a write-in a write-in campaign to get somebody elected that the NHL didn't deem worthy. So unfortunately, we won't be seeing a John Scott situation this year.
But that was fun, Wayne. You got to admit,
it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Seeing it. No need to do it again. You got the one time, and that's good enough.
And as an NHL player, not knowing him personally, not knowing anything about his story, before that weekend, I really despised the guy because, because he played for Buffalo for a number of years, and they played the Bruins a lot, and he made, he basically physically beat up a lot of Bruins players over the years, and because that essentially was his game. So, as a Bruins fan, I didn't like him very much going in, but coming out of that weekend, I really like the guy. I like his story. Yeah. He's a smart guy. I mean, he was an engineering student at Michigan Tech, where he went to school in college before he went pro, and he's kind of faded from the limelight. He pretty much retired at the end of that season. He hasn't really played since then, so he's kind of moved on with life. And but he seems like off the ice, he's a great guy to know and everything else. But anyway, yeah, good story. But unfortunately, we won't be seeing that for the foreseeable future.
That's right.
All right. I inserted a couple of links in the show notes, and I did it earlier this week. Not much of a story here, but I found a website, and I knew about this website, but I hadn't really delved into it. It's collegehockeyinc.com, and on that website, they have full TV schedules. So if you're into college hockey, and maybe I should have inserted this in the College Hockey Minute, but if you're into watching college hockey either on TV or online, this website at collegehockeyinc.com has full TV and streaming schedules for all college teams. Because as you know, Steve, it's difficult to follow a college hockey team from afar.
Yes.
I personally know, trying to follow the Maine Black Bears from afar, to watch their games. It's not as easy like it is with the NHL. You know what channels NHL games are on. You know, every team has their local network, and then you've got NHL Network, NBC Sports, and so on and so on. Well, in college, it's much more difficult.
Yep.
You've got different regional networks. You've got all this. Well, College Hockey Inc. has made it easy to follow college hockey from afar. They've got schedules for both USA and Canada of where you can watch college hockey games on TV.
Wayne, I'm looking at this right now. It is a great hockey. I go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting, but what a great thing this is.
Yep.
I commend you. Really great that you found this.
Yep. And they've got the TV schedules, and then if you go into the individual teams, if you go into the individual team section, you can see their schedule, where you can, because a lot of times if you can't watch it on TV, you can watch it online on streaming. And like, for example, University of Maine streams all of their home games, the games, and by home games, I say in their home building. Like, they'll have home games in the Portland, Maine arena, but those don't get streamed. It's in their building. You can watch their game streamed online for free.
Right.
Through their website. And then a lot of the college teams have that same setup. Sadly, though, not every college team does it for free. Some of the college teams still charge to watch their streams. They haven't migrated to the advertiser paid service at this point, which I feel they should always do. But yeah. So this website is a great resource. If you're Canadian, they have a special list just for Canadian viewers that want to watch college hockey. Now, I wish they would have the same for the CHL, because as an American, to watch Western Hockey League or Ontario Hockey League or Quebec Major Junior Hockey League games, it's very difficult for us to be able to watch those down here in the States. About the only time I ever get to see those games is if NHL Network happens to pick one up.
Right.
Which they generally do for the Memorial Cup, but that's it. That's usually all we get down here. So if any of you Canadian listeners have a place that us Americans can go to watch CHL games, we're all ears. Either send us an email at feedback@thehockeydots.com, or you can tweet us. I'm at Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at sball504man. And you can get us involved in watching CHL games, because we'd like to cover it more, but it's hard to get any kind of coverage on the CHL down here in the States. All right, and finally, some Olympic news. Forward Brian Gionta was named captain of the United States men's hockey team for the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics on Monday. They actually made the announcement during the Winter Classic in New York. Gionta, who hasn't played in the NHL this season, played 17 seasons from 2001 to 2017 with the Devils, Canadiens, and Sabres. He was on the U.S. team at the 2006 Torino games, which lost in the quarterfinals to Finland and led the team with 4 goals in 6 games. The Winter Olympics take place from February 9th through the 25th. And if you look at our show notes, I've included a link to the entire men's hockey roster. And if you look at it, it's basically made up of players from players that are currently playing in Europe in the professional leagues over there, as well as a few NCAA players sprinkled in, and a few AHL players.
Yeah.
So not the most talented team you're ever going to see. And there are actually a lot of comments from friends of mine who said that this American team is going to be horrible. But I also reminded them at the same time that all the countries are in the same boat the Americans are, that with the NHL players being out of the picture for this one, you're not going to see the typical players that we've seen in the past, in the recent past, playing in this this Olympic tournament.
That's right.
But there are a few former NHLers. James Wisniewski, who was most recently with the Carolina Hurricanes and is currently playing over in Denmark, I believe. That's the league he's playing for. Defenseman. Troy Terry is a name we've talked about in the past. He's playing at University of Denver. Was the hero for the Americans in last year's World Junior Championship, who has since aged out, and so he's available. I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans add guys like Casey Middlestat to the team.
Yeah.
Now, they did only announce one goalie, so there's 2 more goalies yet to be added to the team, in which I wouldn't be surprised if they added
Jordan Wall.
Wall or even Ottinger. You may see them both added to that roster. And those guys may end up being the starter over Zapolsky, who is the only goaltender currently on the team. But yeah, you've got some KHL guys. You've got some players playing in the Swedish league, Denmark, Switzerland.
Yeah, I was glad to see, and in fact, 2 players came over from Jokerit in the KHL. Ryan Zapolsky.
Yep.
And Matt Gilroy.
Yep.
Who is leading? He is one of the leading defensemen scorers in the KHL this year. He's having a great season, so I was glad to see him get a slot.
Yep, and who knows? Maybe 1 or 2 of these guys are going to use this if they have a great tournament. Use this as a springboard to get an NHL contract next season.
Absolutely.
Probably will see that happen. Another name that might ring some bells. Chris Bourque. He's played for the Boston Bruins sometime. He's the son of legendary Ray Bourque.
Yep. In fact, there are quite a few players, Wayne, from the KHL.
Yep.
There are 1, 2. I'm counting 3.
Jonathan Blum.
4.
Jonathan Blum playing the KHL.
Jonathan Blum. Yeah,
Matt Gilroy.
Out of Vostok, Jonathan Blum.
Yep.
I think there are 5.
Brian O'Neill.
Yep. 5 or 6. So the KHL is well represented on our squad.
Now, question for you. Do you know if the KHL has made a decision whether or not they're going to allow their players to go? Because with Russia being essentially banned from the Olympics this year, there was a question whether or not the KHL would allow their players to go play.
You know, I haven't heard anything on that front, and I haven't really paid close attention to it. But it appears if we've got 5 guys on our team from the KHL, they're letting them go.
Well, by only naming 5 guys onto the team from the KHL, that tells me that they're not entirely certain they're going to. There could have been more. There's more Americans playing over there than that.
Absolutely. Right.
So I'm thinking that they only name 5 guys because of the fact that they may not be allowed to come over, and then they'd only have 5 players to replace on the roster rather than 10 or 11 or 12 or however many that they could have.
Good point. That's a good point.
They could have named. But yeah, if there is going to be a Team Russia playing in the Olympics, they're going to be. I don't know how that's going to work. I know individuals will be allowed to compete, provided they're clean, and they're going to have to compete under, what do they call it, players from Russia or something like that. There's a specific name and they're not going to be able to fly the Russian flag, of course. So, and I think the KHL was kind of miffed by that whole decision, and I know that at one point they had said, you know what, if Russia's not going to be allowed, we're not going to allow our players to go over there, and they're gonna eliminate that 2-week break in their schedule and continue playing through the Olympics just like the NHL is. So I guess we'll have to look more into that and see what ultimately the KHL is deciding. But if the KHL doesn't allow their players over, then these Americans that are playing in the KHL, they will obviously have to be replaced with somebody else, and I would imagine they'll just throw in some college guys. Because there are quite a few college guys. You've got Will Borgen for St. Cloud State. You've got Ryan Donato playing for Harvard.
Jordan Greenway, Boston University.
Yep, Jordan Greenway. Who else have we got on the team from college? Troy Terry, of course, University of Denver. And that's all I see. So I think we could see some more college players if the KHL guys aren't allowed to come over. So good. And they'll probably take them right from the World Junior Championship team. I wouldn't be surprised if Middlestat gets added, Casey Bellows. A couple other the two goalies, of course, Wall and Ottinger. So it just doesn't feel like this team is set in stone just yet. I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
The whole
That's
point.
a good point.
And it probably won't be until just shortly before the Olympics. All right, let's move on to honors and milestones. There were because it was a turning of a new month. We have some monthly ones to take care of. Boston Bruins goaltender Tuukka Rask, New York Islanders right wing Josh Bailey, and Tampa Bay Lightning right wing Nikita Kucherov have been named the NHL's 3 stars for the month of December. Rask went 9-0-1 with a 1.22 goals against average, 955 save percentage, and 2 shutouts for the month.
God.
Those are great numbers.
Unbelievable numbers.
The Bruins were 10-2-2 in December, and they're now sitting in second place in the Atlantic Division. Bailey led the league with 22 points to help the Islanders collect points in 7 of their 15 December games. So Bailey's played well despite the Islanders struggling. Kucherov posted an NHL best 1.54 points per game, totaling 20 points in 13 games to power the league-leading Lightning to an 11-2 month. Now, looking at rookies, Vancouver Canucks right wing Brock Besser, who led all rookies with 8 goals and ranked second with 13 points in 13 games, has been named the NHL's Rookie of the Month for December. Besser edged Boston Bruins center Danton Heinen, who had 14 points in 14 games. Islanders center Matthew Barzal, who had 12 points, and Columbus Blue Jackets center Pierre-Luc Dubois, who also had 12 points, and Tampa Bay Lightning center Yanni Gourde, who had 9 points for the honor. And then our weekly players of the week, Winnipeg Jets goaltender Connor Hellebuck, Vegas Golden Knights center William Karlsson, and Boston Bruins right wing David Backes have been named the NHL's 3 stars for the week ending December 31st. Hellebuck went 3-0 with a 1.67 goals against, 952 save percentage, and 1 shutout to propel the Jets to a perfect week. Karlsson registered 4 goals and 1 assist, including a hat trick, to help the Golden Knights extend their win and point streak to 7 and 12 games. In fact, that streak went to 8 before it was snapped last night. And that's the longest such runs by any NHL team in its inaugural season. Backes paced the NHL with 6 points in 3 games to guide the Bruins to a 2-0-1 week, extending the club's point streak to 8 games. So kudos to all of those players. All right, we're on to power rankings.
It's power rankings time again, Wayne.
Yep.
And this time I think it's my turn.
It is.
And I put a little time into this. There's a couple surprises. I moved a couple teams up. But it's hard to deny some of these guys where they are. And I'm going to continue to add a number 17 each time I do this, an honorable mention team to the bottom of the list. That would be the team that I think would move into a playoff spot and probably will move into a playoff spot pending a team dropping out. For example, last week, the Islanders were in the rankings. They dropped out. So somebody's taken their place, and off the top of my head right now, I can't see who that is. Probably the Carolina Hurricanes. But no, Carolina was in our last poll, but we'll figure that one out. This week at 17, I have the Anaheim Ducks as the honorable mention. Number 16, barely hanging on, the San Jose Sharks. Number 15, the Carolina Hurricanes, holding steady. I think they were 15 last week.
Yep.
Number 14, the Minnesota Wild. Number 13, the New York Rangers. Number 12, the Dallas Stars. Number 11, Columbus Blue Jackets. Number 10, the New Jersey Devils. Number 9, and I moved them down because I think both these teams above them are playing better. Are playing as well or better. Number 9, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Number 8, the Boston Bruins. Number 7, Nashville Predators. Number 6, Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Jets. Number 5, the Los Angeles Kings. Number 4, the Washington Capitals. Number 3, the St. Louis Blues. Number 2, the Vegas Golden Knights. And if they make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, I don't know what I'm going to do. They are the second best team in the NHL as according to my rankings. And again, I'm running out of I don't know. It's a broken record week after week after week. The number 1 team in the NHL is the Tampa Bay Lightning. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I had a few teams higher up, but the few teams that I had higher I put them up there based on the fact that they've played fewer games than everybody else and had almost as many points as the teams that I put them ahead of. So, or as many, if not more. So, like, I had the Bruins high, I think as high as 5th or 6th because they've played fewer games and have just as many points as the teams behind them. So that's the way I did my rankings. But either way, this looks pretty good. It was pretty close to what I had. So, all right, good
Very
deal.
Good.
All right,
Thank you.
let's take a look ahead at the week ahead. It's a mouthful. At the games of our teams, first of all, and the Boston Bruins and the Carolina Hurricanes have a game against each other this week.
Yeah.
On the 6th, which is Saturday night, the Carolina Hurricanes are playing in Boston, assuming they can get there. And Boston has dug themselves out of this massive snowstorm that they've buried themselves in. That game, in fact, the Carolina played in Pittsburgh last night, and I was watching the game. And normally NHL teams, as soon as the game is over, when they're on the road, they're flying off to either back home or off to the next city if they're on an extended road trip. They don't stick around generally in the city that they just played in.
Right.
They move them immediately so they can start preparing for the next game. Well, in this case, with that storm coming through, the Carolina Hurricanes were unable to leave Pittsburgh last night. So they stayed in Pittsburgh last night, and they were supposed to fly out sometime today and head off to Boston and arrive in Boston today. And then, of course, they play the Bruins tomorrow night in Boston. So we have that game we've got to talk about. And quite frankly, as a Bruins fan, I'm nervous for this one because Carolina Hurricanes are playing as good as any team in the league. Now, of course, the Boston Bruins are playing as good as any team in the league, too. So this game should prove to be a very good game.
I think it'll be an excellent game, I tell you. I'm pulling for Boston, of course, for obvious reasons. So I'm hoping you guys come out tomorrow night and really play well. I don't have any reason to believe that you won't.
Yeah, and with them not playing last night, they've got an extra. They haven't played a game since the 2nd, so Boston should have an extended rest anyway going into this game. So that they should have that as an advantage. Now, as far as the rest of the week is concerned, Boston only has one more game the rest of the week, and that is at Pittsburgh on the 7th. So they're playing back-to-backs here, Saturday night and Sunday night. And Pittsburgh is a damaged team right now, but you can't count them out. They're gonna turn things around at some point. It's a matter of not if but when that happens, and hopefully it will happen after the Boston game. Let's hope they haven't reached rock bottom yet and are starting the climb. And then after that Pittsburgh game, Boston goes on its bye, and they will be off from the 8th through the 12th. So their next game isn't until the 13th of January. Now, Carolina, on the other hand, doesn't have a bye week. So they've got 4 games coming up this week. Of course, they got the game at Boston on the 6th. Then they fly down to Tampa Bay to get out of the cold and play on the 9th down there. And then they fly up to Washington on the 11th. So Carolina is going to be all over the East Coast this upcoming week. And then the very next night on the 12th, they come back home and play the Capitals again. So a true home and home.
Yep.
This week with the Washington Capitals.
And that's a brutal schedule.
On back-to-back nights. Yes, it is. There's
It's a
four
brutal
very tough teams for Carolina. They just came out of a very tough week and did fairly successful with that. And they got another week right on their heels on that. So, and the thing with Carolina is John Forsland said it last night. He says this team has found out what they need to do to compete at a playoff caliber level where they haven't been able to find that extra gear over the past several years. This team has appeared to have figured out what it takes to compete at that level in this league.
Right.
Which makes them dangerous to any team they play.
Right. Agreed.
Because as long as they continue to play that consistent style that they have been for several weeks now, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat by anybody. Never mind, a perennial playoff teams like Tampa Bay and Washington.
Right.
So, and now the Rangers have a light schedule.
Very light. They probably stepped on a plane already. They're probably in Arizona right now playing the Arizona Coyotes tomorrow, and I think that's a matinee. That's an evening game. They're playing at 8 o'clock start time there, and then they play the very next night against the Vegas Golden Knights for the very first time in T-Mobile Arena. That is a 9:30 start time, and that should be very interesting. I'm hoping we can win 2 games, but we'll wait and see. Our road record this year is right up at 500, but we haven't played nearly the number of road games that a lot of teams have. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. I'm hoping for sure we win one of those. But I'm counting that we pretty much need to get 4 points before we go on our bye week. Because when you know how it goes, Wayne, you're on that bye week, 5 games without playing, and all these other teams are playing games, and inevitably 1 or 2 of them get fire and they win 2 or 3 games.
Yep.
Put points on the board, and here you are coming out of the bye week, and you're all of a sudden under the gun.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and a lot of teams come out of that bye week a little bit sluggish for a game or 2 as
right.
well. So you got to make sure that the players, even though they're off, they got to stay sharp. They got to stay, continue to work out whatever they need to do to stay focused and sharp, so that when they come back, they're not chasing it. So, yeah, that's and of course, anytime you're going into T-Mobile Arena, we've talked about their whole home record. What it's like to play against Vegas in that building, and we don't know exactly what it is that's causing that, but Vegas is now 17-2 in their building.
It's unbelievable.
So, and everybody jokes around. Well, yeah, teams are going into Vegas and they're going, night on the strip and yada yada yada, and then they come out and lay an egg when they go to play Vegas. Well, the Rangers won't have to deal with that because they'll be playing the second of a back-to-back, so they're going to get in late the night before.
Yeah.
The game, so there won't be any time for going out on the strip.
That's right.
For the Rangers.
They get into town, get ready for the game, play, and then they may do something. Who knows?
Well, yeah, they're on the bye after that, so some of the players
they might spend the day out there in Las Vegas or 2.
Some of the players may just stay right there in Vegas for a few days.
Yeah, some of the players just may say, "Oh, I love Las Vegas," and stay out there a couple days
and have their family come to them. That's entirely possible. It certainly is. So, but the disadvantage that the Rangers have in that is playing Vegas on the second of a back-to-back. The Vegas doesn't play Saturday, so that gives Vegas one more advantage over the Rangers there. So it's going to be a tough one.
It will be. It'll no doubt about it. But if the Carolina Hurricanes can beat them in Las Vegas, we can.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're not completely invincible. All right. And other than that, like we said earlier, the bye weeks are starting up, so you're going to notice your team's going to have a much lighter schedule over the next probably 2 to 3 weeks while we get through these bye weeks. So the next couple of weeks, the NHL overall is going to have a lighter schedule. Excuse me. All right, let's move on to the minor league minute. And I just have a number of player updates concerning the Bruins because quite frankly, they're worth noting. And it's an article that I found on the Bruins website, actually. And it reads as follows. Between a bevy of injuries to the Bruins, players called up, others sent down, consistency has been difficult to find for Jay Leach and his Atlantic Division leading Providence Bruins. Despite the circumstances, forward Austin Czarnik has been able to make the most of his time in Providence and was named an American Hockey League All-Star on Thursday. The fourth-year pro leads the Bruins, the Providence Bruins, that is, in assists and points with 19 and 28. Czarnik, who made the Bruins NHL roster out of camp last year, has appeared in 55 NHL games, recording 5 goals and 9 assists. The 5'9" center will head to Utica, New York, the same weekend that the NHL has their All-Star game, January 28th and 29th, to represent the Providence Bruins at the American League All-Star Classic. Goaltender Jordan Binnington will also represent the Providence Bruins at the All-Star Classic, although Binnington is not a Bruins prospect. He's on loan from the St. Louis Blues. Bruins 2016 sixth-round pick Oscar Steen has been a key cog during Sweden's World Junior Championship run to the gold medal game. Steen scored the game-winning goal in the shootout against Russia earlier in the tournament, and he again found the back of the net in Thursday's semifinal win against the United States. And then a third player or update, Boston Bruins prospect Ryan Donato is having a good week. Just 2 days after being selected to the United States Olympic team, the 21-year-old Harvard star was named the ECAC Player of the Week and Player of the Month. Donato was also named the Hockey Commissioners Association National Player of the Month for college hockey. So kudos to all of those Bruins prospects having a great week.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
And you have a story about Dominic Turgeon.
I have a story about Dominic Turgeon, and Wayne, if you remember Pierre Turgeon, I know you do.
Sure do.
I remember him from his days as a New York Islander, and he had quite the goal-scoring spree when he was an Islander.
He also played for Buffalo and Colorado.
And played for St. Louis as well. So, but I remember him prominently as being a great player with the Islanders. When I saw that his son, his only son, is playing in the AHL for the Grand Rapids Griffins, it caught my eye, and I figured I'd read this story, and sure enough, it was interesting enough that I thought it would fit in well here with the Minor League Hockey Minute. The name of the story is Offense Arrives to Raise Stock on Defense to raise stock defensively. And it's on Dominic Turgeon. Dominic Turgeon knows the last name is coming up in conversation sooner or later, and he's good with that. But the Grand Rapids Griffins' second-year center is also is also keen on it happening later nowadays as he carves out his own niche in the hockey world. The 21-year-old is the son of Pierre Turgeon, a 19-year NHL great with 515 career goals and the first overall pick by Buffalo in 1987. He amassed 1,327 points in 1,294 games with the Sabres, the Islanders, the Montreal Canadiens, the St. Louis Blues, the Dallas Stars, and the Colorado Avalanche. Dominic loves him, talks to him often, and has no problem being the only son of a hockey great. There is another family member who was no slouch either in Uncle Sylvain Turgeon, Pierre's older brother.
I remember him.
I do not remember him, but he played 12 seasons in the NHL with 269 games. Meanwhile, Dominic is trying to be the best Turgeon he can be. Growing up around my dad, playing in the whole hockey scene my whole life, he's taught me everything I know to this date. So I am just thankful that I learned those kinds of opportunities, he said of his father, now an assistant with the Los Angeles Kings. Turgeon's making a name for himself this season so far. Always known for his defensive abilities, the 6'2", 205-pound Turgeon has seen a nice spike in his offensive production heading into the Griffins' home game Friday against Rockford. Turgeon has 8 goals and 22 points, 6th on the team in 35 games. That has already surpassed last year's rookie total of 6 goals and 12 assists in 71 games. Last year was about having a big defensive game, and I wanted to carry that into this year. But definitely producing more offensively is what I want to do, Turgeon said. I feel like I've played well so far and feel like I've earned trust from Nelly, and he's referring to Coach Todd Nelson of the Grand Rapids Griffins. And, of course, Wayne, they did win the AHL title last year. They won the Calder Trophy, if I'm not or the Calder Cup, if I'm not mistaken. Part of the increased production is Turgeon's getting more ice time. Last year, he worked mostly fourth line and penalty kill. This year, the penalty kill is still standard, but he and longtime line mate Colin Campbell have played more on the second or third lines. Last year, he was in and out of the lineup and eventually worked his way into being a regular guy and was a go-to guy in the playoffs, Nelson said. Last year, him and Soupy, who they refer to, Colin Campbell, Soupy, had plays where they didn't convert. That's not the case this year. He's come miles from where he was at the start of the year in 2017. Campbell said confidence makes all the difference. He slowly built his game every day last year and come in more confident this season, and you can see it. That matters on the ice, Campbell said. Turgeon agreed, but he has also worked to improve his skating ability and, of course, his offensive skills. No longer does he just dump the puck into the offensive zone. He looks to make a play. The offense has been the missing piece of Turgeon's game since he was selected by Detroit in the 3rd round, 63rd overall in the 2014 NHL draft. He did bag 36 goals and 70 points in 72 games in the WHL in 2015-16, his 3rd and final season with the Portland Winterhawks. As I progress here, I'm feeling really comfortable and want to keep pushing in the right direction, Turgeon said. Who knows? 20 goals is a lot of goals in this league, but I think I can do it, and I think I'm right there where I need to be. So kudos to Dominic Turgeon. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the NHL one of these days real soon. And, of course, Grand Rapids is a very good they always have been. They're a very good, solid AHL affiliate. So you never know. You may see this guy up in the NHL real soon, especially with his pedigree. You know, we may see another Turgeon in the NHL very soon.
Yeah, he'll get a shot for sure.
Absolutely.
So, good story. Good story. All right, let's take a quick minute look at some college hockey news. Of course, starting with my team, Maine. Maine had a sweep last weekend on the winning side against RPI back on the 29th and 30th. They are now sitting at 10-7-1, best season they've had in years, and they're now 24th in the pairwise rankings. So they're just sitting not far outside the NCAA picture at this point.
They're starting to get close.
Yep, they're starting to get close. And this week they've got 2 games coming up. They're at BU on the 6th, which is Saturday night, and then they're at Brown on the 8th, a rare midweek game on the 8th. That's Tuesday night, so Monday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, Monday night. And you don't see in college hockey weeknight games very often, so this is a pretty rare game for them, but in this case, that's what they're doing. Now, in terms of upsets last week of ranked teams, of course, U.S. College Hockey Online over the past couple of weeks have redesigned their website a little bit, so it's going to take me a little bit longer to get through these games. But in terms of upsets of ranked teams last week, starting with Friday the 29th, Minnesota State, who is the number 7 team, they lost to Northern Michigan, unranked, 4-3 in that game. Number 1, St. Cloud State actually tied Princeton. Not really a loss, but that was a 3-3 game. Princeton's unranked. Unranked Dartmouth beat New Hampshire, who's the number 16 team. That was a 3-1 game there. Unranked Merrimack beat number 2 Denver 3-2 that night. And unranked Omaha, Nebraska Omaha beat number 19 Union 5-1. On Saturday night, I'm looking back. Unranked Yale beat number 16 New Hampshire, so they lost twice to unranked teams last week. That was a 4-2 game in that one. And I think that was it for upsets. Denver had a 6-0 win over Air Force. Minnesota beat Army. Oh, Nebraska Omaha got another upset, 5-3 against number 19 Union.
Now, Nebraska Omaha, though, they are a good team.
They are. They're not far out of the rankings, but they're currently unranked, so they qualify as far as being an upset. But yeah, they are a pretty good team. And that was it for upsets over the past week in college hockey. Now, as far as games coming up this week, between ranked teams, there are a few out there. Number 15, Wisconsin plays at number 14, Penn State on Friday night. Number 18, Nebraska Omaha. See, they are in their ranking this week. They're now ranked number 18. So, yeah, you were right about that. They're going to be at number 6, North Dakota. And that is it for the week for 2 teams on the rankings playing each other. And then, of course, Wisconsin and Penn State play again Saturday night. And probably, Nebraska Omaha is also playing North Dakota twice. Usually teams going to places like North Dakota, they're playing 2 games while they're up there. It's a haul to get into those places. But also on Saturday night, number 10 Minnesota is playing at number 1 St. Cloud State. So there's that game as well. And that is a Sunday series, whereas the other 2 were Friday, Saturday. All right, now let's take a quick look at the rankings. And this week I'm going to look at the pairwise. I tend to be going back and forth between the pairwise and the U.S. College Hockey Online poll, which is kind of a poll of coaches and media members. The pairwise is, like we explained earlier, is a computer-based ranking where a computer decides who's ranked where. Now, right now at number 16 is Minnesota Duluth. Number 15 is Boston College. Number 13 tied is Omaha and Northeastern. They're both tied at number 13. Number 12 is Penn State. Number 11 is Providence. Number 10 is Minnesota. Number 9 is Western Michigan. Number 8 is North Dakota. Number 7, Ohio State. Number 6, Minnesota State. Number 5, Denver. Number 4 is Cornell. Number 3 is Notre Dame. Number 2 is Clarkson. And number 1 this week is St. Cloud State. And they've pretty much been up there quite some time.
Yep.
And, of course, like I said, Maine is number 24. So they're getting there.
Yeah, they're getting close.
And if you look at it, BU is actually ranked below them. Maine's 24th. BU's dropped all the way to 29th.
Yeah.
And they were a top 5 team in the preseason.
Yep. All that talent on their team.
Yep. They're just not doing anything with it. So, all right. That's all I have for the college hockey minute. So let's move on to picks of the week. And I got to hear this story because I saw the game, or I didn't see the game, but I saw the highlights of this this beard incident. And it looked very painful.
Oh my God, Wayne! I saw it today at work. I actually got a Twitter feed on it from SB Nation. They sent me a Twitter feed and said, "You've expressed interest in the past on Joe Thornton, and here you go." So I'm like standing in a grocery store, and I'm like, "Oh my God, look at this!" As you know, we've talked about it in the past on this show. Joe Thornton has a one-of-a-kind beard. I don't think you'd even run across somebody with that kind of a beard in. It's very rare. You wouldn't go through your day and run across a guy like that. He puts Grizzly Adams to shame. He really does with that kind of a beard. But I tell you, this last night, as a matter of fact, Joe Thornton, who's been getting in quite a few, he's getting skirmishes and he's been penalized and suspended and everything recently, goes into another night of I just watched the play. It looked like he just had enough with Nazem Kadri, dropped the gloves, and they got into a fight. Yep. Anyways, my pick of the week this week, Joe Thornton and his beard-pulling incident with Nazem Kadri. And, whether or not there's going to be any action taken by the league, we don't know. Probably not. But we're speaking very soon after this event occurred. It occurred last night in the game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the San Jose Sharks. And I'm reading an article from Mary Clark of SB Nation. It's no secret in the NHL that Joe Thornton has a magnificent beard. When you think of a majestic hockey beard, you normally think of Thornton or his San Jose Sharks teammate, Brent Burns. What if I told you that having a beard has the occasional drawback when playing the game of hockey? Don't believe me? Thornton found this out the hard way when squaring off against Toronto Maple Leafs forward Nazem Kadri on Thursday evening, as his beard became collateral damage. Yep, that's right. Kadri tore off an entire chunk of Thornton's beard. Talk about gross. The partial beard removal came in the midst of a fight between the two, and you can get a clear snapshot of where Kadri came away with a handful of hair. And I actually got it by watching the video on CBS.com. That's actually the video I watched as part of SB's story. As if things couldn't get worse or better, Sharks backup goaltender Aaron Dell was seen holding the missing beard hair in his glove on San Jose's bench. So gross, yet so very much a hockey thing to do. If you watch that replay, Wayne, it takes the announcers pointing it out because you would have never seen it right off the bat.
Yep.
Because Kadri, it looks like, goes for his jersey, but actually pulls out a big chunk of hair and then just kind of, you get something sticky on your hand, and you kind of drop it off. That was Joe Thornton's beard.
It just looked extremely. I can only imagine what that felt like. Man, that must have been painful. It didn't look like it hurt him though, because Joe Thornton was not showing any kind of, when he's sitting in the penalty box after the fact. It didn't look like he was hurt, but man, that had to sting the face. But yeah, they showed the chunk of beard on the ice. They showed a close up of it, and then they also showed the chunk of beard sitting in the backup goalie's glove, which is going to end up getting auctioned off at some point for charity. Someone will pay top dollar for that chunk of beard, for sure. It'll be interesting to see what becomes of that hunk of hair from Joe Thornton's beard. But that whole situation all started off basically right in the opening face-off of the game.
Yeah.
They started whacking at each other in the face-off circle to start off the game. So I don't know.
If you watch it was if they were going to throw the gloves before the game ever started.
Yeah.
And I don't know what beef they had with each other prior to this, but as I said, we've been following it. Thornton he was suspended. He got $5,000 fine levied against him, I think a couple weeks ago. For I think it was for slashing. I can't remember, but and then he's been getting in fights as well.
Yep.
So I don't know what's going on with Joe Thornton, but
he's been getting a bit angry lately.
Yep.
To say the least. So yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, God, that must have hurt. That's all I have to say.
It was a painful thing to watch, I'll tell you that.
But yeah, and Kadri's known to be a bit of he's probably Toronto's version of Brad Marchand. One of those players that you love to hate, but you love him if he's on your team, but you don't like him so much if he's not.
Yeah.
Kind of a pest.
Yeah. I kept thinking of that Bugs Bunny cartoon with the two French chefs, one guy pulling the one guy's beard and the other guy tweaking his nose and the other guy throwing a punch, and
Yep.
That's what I kept thinking of.
Yep. Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, good story. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, God, that had to hurt. All right. Well, I've got one that's a story that's equally as unique and strange. It is an article I saw on NHL.com by Kevin Woodley, an NHL.com correspondent. It's about goaltenders and their weird superstitions and pregame rituals and all this stuff that goalies have. Goalies are definitely weird when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
Calgary Flames backup goaltender David Rittich likes to have his head in the game as early as possible. So on days he's scheduled to start, he asks someone to take shots at his mask at the end of morning skate, a ritual which roots to his 36 save shutout back on October 14th while playing for Stockton of the American Hockey League. That morning, goaltending coach Colin Zulianello, accidentally shot a puck off Rittich's mask. Rittich's next start did not feature a puck-hitting mask during the morning skate, and he allowed 5 goals, so a tradition began. It has continued in Calgary since his promotion to the NHL on November 24th, and the duty now falls to Flames goaltending coach Jordan Sigalet. Each time Rittich is scheduled to start, Sigalet meets him near center ice at the end of the pregame skate and does his best to put 2 shots off his mask. He just crouches down and puts his head down up, and I flip them straight up at its cage pretty hard. As soon as I get the second one, he gives me a high five and skates off the ice, Sigalet said. It usually takes me about 6 shots to hit him twice, depending on how accurate I am that day. In the fine line between superstition and preparation, Rittich may well have put himself on the side of the crazy goalie stereotypes. Many of his puck-stopping peers shake their head in disbelief when informed of Rittich's ritual, but don't think there aren't other odd habits out there. And then they go on to talk about some other goaltenders. Braden Holtby's extensive pregame routine is well documented during his first Stanley Cup playoff run with the Capitals back in 2012 and includes a variety of warm-up exercises for his eyes and body that seem odd to outsiders. Even goaltending coach Mitch Korn worried the routine might be too much for Holtby when Korn began working for the Capitals in 2014. Holtby said it's best to me. I control my pregame routine. My routine does not control me, Korn said. It was the right answer. I never asked again. Not all habits involve getting ready to play a game. Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens has become famous for quickly fishing any practice shots that beats him out of his net. It doesn't bother me when they're in there, but the last thing I want is pucks in the crease and in my feet when I'm trying to move around, Price said. That's kind of the mindset behind it, but also a clear workspace, a clear mind type of mindset. It doesn't bother Martin Biron, who played 16 seasons in the NHL and is TV analyst for the Buffalo Sabres, developed a similar habit during warm-ups. When his teammates formed a horseshoe around the edges of the zone and took turns shooting on him, Biron would pull out of the net any shot that beat him and flip it into the stands. He stopped when he almost injured a loved one. I stopped doing it after a game in Montreal because I flipped one into the stands and it landed right next to my mother. So I was like, I could have hit her in the head and that wouldn't be good, Biron said. Biron also shared another example of a pregame ritual that amazed him. He discussed it recently with Philadelphia Flyers general manager Ron Hextall, a fiery goalie who had 13-season NHL career. Hextall liked to touch the 4 faceoff dots on his side of the rink and the one at center ice after he finished warm-ups. During the 93 Adams Division semifinal, Hextall was playing for the Nordiques against the Canadiens. Not long into that series, the Canadiens figured out Hextall's ritual and sent a player out to stand on the center ice dot to mess with the pattern. At the end of warm-up, Hextall touched the 1 dot, 2nd dot, 3rd dot, 4th dot, and he went to go to center ice, and the Montreal player gave Hextall a slash and said, "Get out of here." Biron said. Both teams got to center ice and started to push each other, and in the background is Ron Hextall trying to get with his feet to touch the dot, and that was his superstition. Most of the crazy superstitions, and I was one of them, you don't do your superstitions, you really thought the world was going to end. It's hard to see how Riddich's ritual helps him come game time, but Sigalet said he doesn't think it will negatively affect the fun-loving 25-year-old rookie from the Czech Republic. I'm not worried he needs this because he's such a high-character guy with extreme focus, but he's a goofy kid who likes the quirky stuff, Sigalet said. I don't know. That's crazy, deliberately hitting the mask.
Yeah, that is.
As part of your pregame getting ready. And you know, there was another one this week. They didn't touch on it. I noticed in the World Junior Championship, the goalie for Canada, I can't remember his first name, Hart.
I saw this.
He has one as well. And what game was it? The backup goalie for the opponent that night.
Yeah.
Was it Denmark?
It might have been Denmark.
I think it was. Basically, the backup goalie for their opponent one night, Hart has this superstition that he has to be the last guy off the ice at the pregame warm-up. Well, this backup goalie, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but this backup goalie waited until everybody was off the ice, and they were doing this waiting game, kind of like the Tyler Seguin thing and Mark Scheifele thing that they got going on. And finally, Hart gets off the ice. Then the opposing goalie gets off the ice, but Hart didn't actually completely remove himself or go into the locker room. He went and hid in the tunnel, waited for the other goalie to go out, and then when the other goalie went down the tunnel into his locker room, Hart comes back out, jumps on the ice, does a twirl, goes back off the ice and into the tunnel again.
Yeah. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that.
Yep. Everybody's got their crazy little superstitions, and these goalies, they got some of the weirdest ones.
Oh man, yeah. I've always heard the stories that goalies are a little weird. You know, that their way that they have to look at things and how they prepare for games, they're out there. A lot of them.
Yep. And going back to when I was a kid, Patrick Waugh, he would talk to his goalposts as if they were people.
Yeah.
That was famous too. He would constantly talk to his goalposts.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable competitor though, Patrick Waugh.
So anyway, that was my story that I found. But
that's a good one. I enjoyed it.
But yeah, that's it for the week. That's all we have.
Yeah.
We don't have anything else. It was a busy week. Of course, it's been 8 days since we've done one, so with the World Juniors and everything else going on. There was quite a bit to get to. But tentatively scheduled next week. Again, we shoot for Thursday, but that could change. Plus or minus a day usually. Doesn't usually go more than that. So look for us to do another recording. And I've been trying to get better at updating our YouTube channel when we do settle in on a time to make sure that that's updated so you know when our live stream, because we do live stream the recording of the podcast on YouTube. So you can actually watch us live. It doesn't come with the music and the audio highlights that we insert at the end, but the meat of the podcast is there anyway, right on the YouTube channel. And you can just get there by going to YouTube. Actually, thehockeynuts.com/YouTube is probably the easiest way to get to that. So we're tentatively scheduled for next week, and we'll have highlights or our reaction to the gold medal game tonight. Bronze medal game looks like is going to the Americans. It's now 6-0 halfway through the game. So unless there's
good to see that the Americans care, Wayne.
Yep. So unless there's a miraculous collapse by the Americans, it looks like the Americans are going to take the bronze in that game. So we'll have reaction to the gold medal game on next week's show, and then of course all the news of the week. And it should be a lighter week because we'll be in the heart of the bye weeks come next week's show. So there won't be as much to talk about, at least from our perspective anyway. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the show, unless you have anything else to add.
No, Wayne, just Happy New Year to you again.
Yeah, you too. To everybody out there who's listening.
Absolutely. And we look forward to another great season of podcasts here all the way up through June in the Stanley Cup.
Yep, we will. And we'll take it to you every week from here on out, barring any changes. I know the weekend that I go up to play in the pond hockey tournament in February in Maine will be a little difficult getting a podcast in then, but we'll see what we can do on that one. And then we'll go from there. So, all right.
Good.
Well, let's go ahead and end things then. Until next week, we will see you then. Have a good night.
Thanks, Wayne. Have a good night now.
You too. All right.
When is your pond hockey?
February 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
But
you gotta take a day at least though to drive up there.
Yeah, I'm driving up Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then of course, Thursday, Friday. Thursday is just going to be a bum around day where I meet with friends and family, do the catch up with friends and family thing. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we'll have, Friday and Saturday, those 2 days we'll have 3 games sometime during those 2 days. And then if we make the playoffs in our division, we'll have games on Sunday.
How many teams come from a division?
Well, I don't have the full schedule yet. They haven't announced it, but I do know there are over 50 teams total in, I think there's 4 different divisions.
Oh, wow.
They have, no, more than that. There's an A, a B division, and a recreational division, and an over 35 and an over 50 division. And then there's a just for fun division. So 6 different divisions. And they've got well over 50 teams in, and there's another week left to go to get teams in. And of course, they're expecting a mad rush of registrations between now and then.
God. Wow, that is something else.
So it's going to be a pretty good sized tournament.
Yeah. And you only play 3 games?
We're going to play 3 games. Yeah, we stay within our division. We don't go outside those divisions.
Okay.
And we're in the recreational division, so yeah, there'll be 3 games, and then how you do in your 3 games will determine whether or not you're one of the. I think they take top 8 in the division into the playoffs. Now we could be in a division. We're probably in the largest division. The recreational division, I think, is the largest. We could be in there with 30 teams and have
Oh.
to be a top 8 out of 30. We could be
Oh.
in there with 12 teams and be a top 8 out of 12. I won't know until I have the final schedule. And then if we make the top 8, then we play on Sunday in a quarterfinal, and then the semifinal later on. And then we could play up to 3 games on Sunday if we go all the way to the championship.
Wow. That is wild.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
So it is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. It's going to be tons of fun. So, and it looks like we've got at least 5 committed players anyway. I've got 5 committed players and a couple of maybes, and I got to nail down from my maybes whether or not they're in for sure, and then we'll go from there.
Now, how many guys on the 5 per team?
7 is the maximum.
7.
Yep. So, should be fun.
Man, that will be.
And it looks like there'll probably be 2 from this area, possibly 3. One of the maybes is from down here. So,
wow,
although I haven't heard from him since he made his maybe declaration, so I'm expecting he'll probably back out, but we'll see.
Yeah, you have to know pretty soon.
Yeah, probably.
Man, that is really good. If I could have went, I would, but I can't this year.
Yeah.
But it should be fun.
Yep.
Tony and I are putting some last minute decisions and stuff together on a trip to go up north anyways and catch a hockey game while we do it, but we haven't got it finalized yet. But I should know something in the next